Miami landed a huge commitment in its defensive backfield, completing a massive overhaul with the commitment of Keionte Scott of Auburn, now briefly at Houston, comes to Miami and reunites with his old coach, Zach Etheridge. So this is one that there's a lot to it, a lot of different stages in Keionte Scott's career, but I think for the reasons we'll get into, this makes a ton of sense for him and for Miami. He could potentially be an NFL player here for a team that needs to overhaul its secondary. Pete, hop in here.
Hey, D, yeah, man. Big fan of this pickup right here. You mentioned the NFL upside. We'll talk about how last year was a down season for him. But anytime you can add someone who the NFL scouts view as a future NFL player, or at least having the talent to be an NFL player, right? Because there's a lot of really good college players who just don't have NFL ability. This is a player who has that.
Yeah, I agree. It's the size, the speed. So just getting into some of the specs and why this makes sense. And look, a lot of this kind of stuff is timing, right? And fit. Jaden Daniels, we talk about him as one of the most valuable players in the world when it comes to football, right? If you're signing everyone in the world to a free agent deal in the sport of football, Jaden Daniels, I think, is going to be close to the top of that list. And he was not a fit there at Arizona State, becomes a fit at LSU. The timing made sense. Bo Nix, you could say the same thing. There's a million of guys where that's an example. Cam Ward even. I mean, the timing to come to Miami when he did made a ton of sense, propelled him to the number one pick. I'm talking about quarterbacks, but this is something that you see just across the country at various spots. Timing in life and sports and transactions is everything. So with Keionte Scott, why this makes sense, just going through the specs, 6 foot, 192 pounds, looks the part. You could see it when he's in pads. He looks like an SEC type defensive back. From San Diego, California, Helix High School, same high school as Reggie Bush, same high school as Alex Smith. Ran a 10.9 in high school. So this guy with legitimate speed. When you get to 10.9 at 190 pounds, this is real NFL size and speed. You're talking in the 4.4 range when you project to the 40. Goes to Snow College, which is a junior college in San Diego. Number one cornerback in JUCO. Then moves on to Auburn, coached by Zach Etheridge, Miami's current defensive backs coach, along with Will Harris. I would call both defensive backs coaches because they kind of both coach both positions. So let's say defensive backs coach Zach Etheridge now at Miami. So Etheridge had him at Auburn. And while at Auburn, 15 tackles in 3 years, 6 tackles for loss, a sack, an INT, also returned punts, took a punt to the house. This is a guy who was a second-team All-ACC performer in 2023. And just in terms of experience, you were talking about over 1,000 snaps in his career, 1,300 defensive snaps, plus the special team snaps. So this is a guy who's played a ton of football in terms of why he's available. So last year, it looked like he might go to the NFL. Pete, I know we were going to talk in a second about some of the attention he's gotten from NFL guys, playing that nickel role, which is where he's best suited. He was tackling well. He was running well. He was making a lot of plays. When he decided to potentially go pro or go to another school, Auburn said, and this was after Etheridge left to Houston, he said, look, I'll come back to Auburn, but I want to play on the outside. Plays outside this year and struggles mightily. By the end of the year, week 8, week 9, you had freshmen playing over him. It was just a complete collapse at that position. Commits to Houston out of the portal, trying to reunite with Zach Etheridge. Etheridge then leaves to Miami. And then just as he jumped in the portal, Scott jumps in the portal again to leave Houston. So the reunion part makes sense. And a move to nickel where he flourished. Miami doesn't need outside corners. They got Xavier Lucas. They got OJ Frederick. They got Ethan O'Connor. They got Damari Brown. We need a nickel and we need a safety or depth in both positions at the least. This is a guy who can't thrived at nickel, big body type, fits in exactly with what you want to do, and looks the part, and of course, being reunited with his old coordinator. This makes all the sense in the world as a NFL-type reclamation project for a defensive backfield that needed an overhaul.
Yeah, and I showed the tweet from the Senior Bowl last September that said that he's a starting level nickel in the NFL impact player. Here's another tweet from 2023 when he decided to come back for school and for another year. And this was Jim Nagy, who is the director of the Senior Bowl, or was the director of the Senior Bowl at the time, is now the GM for Oklahoma. But this is 2023, saying return of Keionte Scott, because he had been hurt, is big for Auburn tonight. So I mean, this is the guy who was talking to NFL GMs and scouts pretty much more than anybody on a daily basis, saying this in October 2 years ago. Decides to come back, right? So was squarely on the NFL radar, probably would have gotten drafted a couple of years ago. Comes back to school, and as you just mentioned, did not have a great year, but now is able to reunite with his coach with a real opportunity here to get his stock back to where he would want it to be.
Yeah, and I think part of this is, as I deal more with people, professional scouts, executives, even football, even sports like baseball, they'll write in their scouting report, looks right, or something like along those lines. That's part of this thing is when you look at your team, it should look a certain way at different positions. And when you look at a guy like Keionte Scott at the SEC level against Alabamas of the world, teams like that, he looks right. He looks like a guy that belongs on the field with those great players. He's got the height. He's got the size in terms of being 190 plus. He runs, you're talking about 4.4 speed, 10.900, and he plays fast. So, I mean, you're talking about guys, when you're taking punt returns to the house in the SEC and you're 190 pounds and you play defense, that's pretty impressive. So you put him at nickel, right? You still have Charles Brantley. He can play nickel as well as a smaller guy. But just say you put Keionte Scott at nickel. Now on the outside, you have Xavier Lucas, potential first-round pick with 10.5 speed at 100, almost 200 pounds. OJ Frederic, long, lanky player, great athlete, freshman All-America. Ethan O'Connor, redshirt freshman who had 4 interceptions last year, highly recruited by Georgia. Also, 6 foot, has some good length to him. Damari Brown, almost 200 pounds, can run, can also play nickel. Now you're looking right at corner. Add Zechariah Poyser to the mix at safety, who was freshman All-America from Jacksonville State. Georgia wanted him badly. Add Jacoby Thomas, who's going to start for Tennessee this year, which is a great defense. And he brings a physical presence. He's got size and length as well. Now, again, it looks the right way. And remember, Scott can also play safety. So you have your 2 safeties, but Scott can slide in if someone gets hurt. You still have Marquise Williams. You still have Dylan Day. But now your safety room, which was looking extremely thin a week ago, now has multiple options that you can use.
Yeah, I think this is it's a really nice pickup. I don't think it's more of a luxury get. I would say probably because you felt that the room has been improved as a whole, but this raises that not only the floor, but I think it raises the ceiling of that room because of the NFL upside that we've discussed here.
The other aspect of this is the special teams value and the punt return value. This was a guy in 2023 that led the entire SEC in punt return average. He was number 8 nationally. So you've added Keelan Marion, who is an All-America kick returner on the kick return side, doesn't return punts really. Now you add Keionte Scott as a punt returner who at one point, just 2023, not very long ago, was top 10 nationally in punt returns, playing in the SEC. Competition was not a problem, obviously. So you could have 2 of the best returners in the country at the same time, both of whom are in that 190, 200-pound plus range, grown men. I think they're both like at 22, 23 years old. They both have long speed. Keionte Scott, we mentioned, with that 10.9 speed. Now your special teams is starting to look more like it should, with experienced big players that are also explosive and know what they're doing. And I think if you look at a comparison, I'm not saying this is how he's going to be in terms of his level. I'm not saying he's going to be a second-round pick. I'm not saying he's going to be an NFL stud. I'm just saying in terms of the way he's used. Cooper DeJean was a guy who was a nickel. He was a safety. He could play outside corner as well, but probably better in those other 2 roles, particularly as you jumped up in level. And you look at his punt return average. Cooper DeJean was, in 2023, was 16th nationally. Very good, obviously. Scott, better than that, at 8th nationally. So I'm not saying he is Cooper DeJean. I'm just saying with Scott, the versatility is what attracts you. And when you have outside corner sewed up, and that was his weakness, he wanted to play it. He learned he probably shouldn't be playing it. And you have his coach who knows him the best, under whom he had the most success, and you put him back in the role where he had the most success. You were looking at a guy who could be phenomenal. Look, there's a lot of guys on this roster. When you look at the portal, you want Carson Beck to be 2023. You want Austin, Bert Auburn, the kicker, to be 2023 when he was one of the better kickers in the country. You want Keionte Scott to be 2023. But look, if they had that season last year, all those guys would be in the pros. So part of the reason you're getting them is because they had off seasons last year, but it shows you they had the physical potential to dominate at an SEC high-end level. Carson Beck dominated the SEC, was projected as the number 1 overall pick by some people in 2023. Keionte Scott looked fast-tracked to NFL in 2023. Burt Auburn, Texas still wasn't in the SEC at that point, but they were one of the top programs in the country, and he was one of the top kickers in the country in terms of a percentage basis. So put Scott in that category of if they can regain their 23 form under better circumstances. For Scotty's with his old coach, like we talked about, playing his old role. Beck, better offensive line, worse competition. Auburn, Burt Auburn getting away from some of the negativity that's tough for a kicker to deal with when the fan base has seen you miss some big kicks and just kind of goes downhill. We see it in the NFL all the time with kickers getting fresh starts. I think the ingredients are there for at least some of these guys to perform at the 23 level. And if they do, and if all of them do, I mean, you're looking at an infusion of star power at those positions.
Agreed. I like this pickup a lot. I think this could be potential to be one of the more high impact pickups of not only this window, but both portal windows. And we'll see if there's any more additions to come here. Maybe 1 or 2 more. We will have you covered here at CanesInSight. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you are not already. See you guys soon. Go Canes.
Go Canes.